Hello everyone, I'm the TCG Trashman, and today I wanted to talk about Magic the Gathering's Marvel Spider-Man. So, if you didn't know, Spider-Man has been fully revealed for quite a while now, but this is the week of the pre-release, and I just wanted to talk about my thoughts on the set. The mechanics are pretty sweet. Start with Mayhem, because that was my favorite mechanic that they showed off. Ever since I first saw Madness, I just thought that was the coolest mechanic ever. A reward for discarding your cards, that's awesome. And Mayhem has a similar effect, where it lets you play cards that you put into your graveyard this turn if you discarded them. And I'm really excited for this mechanic because, it's just, I don't know, I really like Madness. I think it's super cool. And Mayhem is going to capture that same flavor for me, I think. What I would consider the flagship mechanic of this set is web slinging. That is, when a creature is tapped, you can pay a creature from your hand's web slinging cost, return the tapped creature to your hand, and place the untapped web-slinging creature onto the battlefield in its place. So it's kind of like ninjutsu, but instead of doing it in combat, you just need a tapped creature, and you get to do some mana cheating. I think this is a very cool mechanic, and honestly, the most disappointing part about it is that it's called web-slinging, very similar to how I felt about Landers. I'm worried about how that's going to translate. I really hope it returns, because I think it's a cool mechanic. Now, let's go over the returning mechanics, the first of which being Connive. If you don't know, looting effects are really strong in any trading card game, as removing the worst card from your hand and replacing it with a much better card is always going to be good. Even if you just get to draw the card, you realize you don't need it and discard it, because then it's not filling your deck. Conniving is fantastic, and this one specifically, if you discard a non-land card, you get a 1/1 counter, which, again, rewards you for discarding cards you just don't need at the moment, and I think that's awesome. I'm not as big of a fan of this mechanic, so we're going to put it here, which is Modified. All that Modified cares about is that your creature is not in its vanilla state, basically, whether it's a counter that's on it, or an equipment. All of these things make it Modified. And then finally, we have the return of MDFCs. Specifically, these ones transform. You can either cast them on the front side and then flip them to their backside later, or you can just raw cast them on the backside. Regardless of which you do, they are pretty cool. I really like them, and I think that the ones they added in this set, specifically, are going to be great commanders. My first problem with this set is that it doesn't feel like it even remotely belongs in Magic at all. I never thought we'd see the day where Bagel and Schmear and City Pigeons are some of the less offensive cards in the set. And Mark Rosewater's only defense was, if you don't like the set, then just ignore it. But now that it's coming to Standard and is required to at least analyze for competitive play, you can't really ignore it if this was in the original format that this set was clearly intended to be released in, which would be a straight to Modern, but none of the cards are good enough for Modern set, so Commander players can play it. Then yeah, we could ignore it, but unfortunately, due to the formatting that maybe Mark Rosewater didn't have control over, but the company he works for did, we are stuck with it. So, unfortunately, this leads to my next gripe, which is that this is a standard legal set. There's no ignoring it, and harkening back to what Mark Rosewater said, we can't just ignore it, because unlike Warhammer 40k, which you could completely ignore, Fallout, completely ignore. Spider-Man, you cannot completely ignore, because you at least have to consider all of the cards in it and determine whether they are competitively viable in Standard. Of course, Magic has been leaning towards Commander in recent years, so maybe that's why Mark said this, but Standard is Magic's flagship mode, so saying you can ignore it feels goofy. This gripe was more muted in earlier sets, being Final Fantasy, because Final Fantasy has a very similar setting and rules that dictate the world to Magic the Gathering. However, were it up to me, Final Fantasy wouldn't be standard legal either. Another gripe I touched on earlier is that this set was clearly not meant to go straight to Standard. It feels incomplete, and the leading theory is that this was originally meant to be created as a similar set to Assassin's Creed, where it would be sold in Beyond boosters, it would only be playable in Modern onward, and, again, none of the cards would actually be playable in Modern, so you wouldn't have to worry about it. But notably, the set wasn't draftable for Assassin's Creed. All the boosters only had 7 cards as well. So again, not a draftable set, and you can kind of feel it in this set that they have all of these legendary creature spiders, and it really feels like that's where the bulk of the work went, and that's why, in my opinion, these are the cards that they made first, and were planning on selling in these Beyond boosters, and then a lot of the non-legendary creatures were kind of just thrown in for the sake of, well, now we need to turn this Beyond booster set into a full-fledged set. So all of the commons, uncommons are very forgettable that aren't legendary. And if you just happened to click on this video and didn't see it yet, I am the TCG Trash Man, and I have a particular affinity for commons and uncommons, and almost all of them are very lackluster in this set. And again, I think it's just because they were scared to power creep by accident in their rush to create some cards for the drafting environment. Which, again, is why there are only 5 archetypes, leading into another complaint. My next complaint being that the drafting environment for this set is not great. I just don't know what to say. It's quite disappointing, in my opinion. And while I think you can make a functional draft, the amount of legendaries I got, it just, like, it was kind of insulting. I feel like any set that focuses on having multiple copies of the same legendary, I just find to be very disappointing. And again, this leads back into the last point of this set wasn't really made to be drafted or even really played with multiple copies of any of these cards. So in an effort to make this set playable in a drafting environment and even in standard, they had to add a bunch of cards that had a way to allow multiple legendaries of a single card to be played on the battlefield at the same time, which again, I can understand it if it's just a one-off effect, but Magic was meant so that legendary creatures are legendary because they are so powerful or their effect is incredibly impactful, such a way that you should only have one of them on the battlefield at a time. And I feel like they're usually very careful when it comes to breaking the legendary rule, and that's almost one of the only rules that they're incredibly hesitant to break. You know what the only thing worse than one Vivi is? It's 2 Vivis. It's 3 Vivis. I mean, you weren't meant to have multiple copies of this card on the battlefield. It's just, it's maddening. And then finally, there is quite possibly the most offensive part of this all, which is the Soul Stone, the chase card of the set, the headliner. I think the reason for me that this is the biggest grievance of the set is not just because it is a bad thing to make a mana rock, especially the best black mana rock in the game, the chase for a set, because, again, now something that is almost immediately going to be, in quotes, a commander staple, is now the chase card of a set. It's going to probably go down to $40, but still, $40 for a mana rock that generates 1 mana? Are we kidding? The Soul Stone, unfortunately, also implies that they are going to have multiple stones, multiple Infinity Stones, at least 1 for each of the basic colors in Magic the Gathering. The combination of knowing the impending extra stones are going to come around, in addition to knowing that half of the sets from here on out are going to be Universes Beyond, just fills me with so much dread. This might be Magic's best financial years ever, but I can't imagine that this success is going to be the new normal. However, we will end on a positive. It seems that scalpers have been kind of left holding the bag on the Spider-Man collector boosters, as the prices on them have been dropping pretty drastically from the highs they were a couple weeks ago, and I've got to say that makes me very happy. Also, it's not just collector boosters, but the play boosters. I hope you all enjoyed, and please have a good day. Remember, value all your cards.